On a cold winter night in the English city of Hull, a young woman vanished into the darkness. She was 21 years old, a student, a daughter, a friend. Her name was Libby Squire. What began as an ordinary night out with friends would turn into one of the most disturbing missing person cases the United Kingdom had seen in years. This is not just a story about a crime. It is a story about vulnerability, silence, unanswered questions, and a family forever changed. Liberty Anna Squire, known to everyone as Libby, was born on January 1st, 1998. She was studying philosophy at the University of Hull, known among her friends as thoughtful, intelligent, and kind. Her family described her as gentle and caring, someone who worried deeply about others. She loved learning, long conversations, and the simple joys of student life. Nothing about Libby suggested danger. Nothing about her life suggested it would end this way. Thursday night, January 31st, 2019. Libby went out with friends to enjoy the evening. Music, laughter, alcohol. A normal night, like so many before it. Shortly before midnight, Libby was refused entry to a nightclub due to her condition. Concerned for her safety, her friends made sure she got into a taxi and returned home. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Libby arrived at her house on Wellesley Avenue. But here is where the story takes its first dark turn. She never went inside. CCTV cameras would later show Libby walking alone along Beverly Road. She appeared disoriented, upset, crying. Multiple people passed her that night. Some noticed her distress. Some spoke to her briefly, but no one stayed. It was cold, it was late, and Libby was alone. In those moments that would later haunt an entire city, Libby needed help, and the help never truly came. When Libby failed to return home and stopped responding to messages, alarm bells rang. Her family was notified. Friends searched the streets, and soon police launched a major missing person investigation. More than 100 officers were involved. Dogs, drones, helicopters, volunteers, all combed Hull's streets, parks, rivers, and alleyways. Posters appeared everywhere. Social media filled with her face. Have you seen Libby? For Libby's mother, Lisa Squire, the waiting was unbearable. Every hour without news deepened the terror. Every phone call raised hope, only to crush it again. In public messages, she begged for information. In private, she lived a nightmare no parent should ever endure. 6 days after Libby disappeared, police arrested a man named Powell Relowitz. At first, the arrest was not for murder, but for unrelated sexual offenses. As investigators dug deeper, a disturbing pattern emerged. Relowitz had a history of predatory behavior, voyeurism, sexual assaults, burglaries. He was not a stranger to police, and now he was connected to Libby. For 7 long weeks, there was no answer, no body, no certainty, only hope slowly dissolving into dread. Hull waited, Libby's family waited, and every day without news felt heavier than the last. On March 20th, 2019, fishermen made a grim discovery in the Humber estuary. A body. It was Libby. 7 weeks after she disappeared, miles away from where she was last seen. The relief of knowing was instantly replaced by devastation. Due to the condition of her body, medical experts could not determine an exact cause of death, but the investigation revealed a horrifying truth. Libby had been taken, sexually assaulted, and killed. Her body was then disposed of in the river. This was no accident. This was a crime. In 2021, Powell Relowitz stood trial. The courtroom was tense, silent, heavy with grief. Prosecutors presented evidence, CCTV footage, DNA, patterns of behavior. They described a man actively searching for a vulnerable woman that night, and they described how Libby, alone and distressed, became his target. Libby's parents sat through every moment. They listened to details no family should ever hear. They saw the man responsible for their daughter's death, and they carried themselves with dignity, even as their hearts shattered. In February 2021, Powell Relowitz was found guilty of rape, guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 27 years. But for Libby's family, justice did not bring peace. Her mother would later say, "There is no closure. Our daughter is gone." No sentence could undo the loss. No verdict could bring Libby home. Because Libby was seen and still disappeared. Because warning signs existed and still failed. Because this was not a remote place or a hidden corner of the world. This happened on a normal street, on a normal night. Libby Squire was more than a headline, more than a case file. She was a young woman with a future, a daughter deeply loved. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about safety, vulnerability, and the moments where intervention might save a life. And as the city of Hull remembers Libby, one question lingers in the silence. What if someone had stayed? As this story comes to an end, there are no simple answers, no words that can undo what was lost. Libby Squire was more than a name in the headlines. She was a daughter deeply loved, a friend who laughed easily, a young woman with plans, curiosity, and a future that should have stretched far beyond that cold winter night. Her disappearance reminds us how fragile safety can be, how quickly ordinary moments can turn into tragedy, and how vulnerable a person can become when the world looks away, even briefly. Justice was served in a courtroom. A sentence was handed down, but justice does not heal grief. It does not replace a life. It does not bring closure to a family who will forever carry an empty space where their daughter should be. What remains is memory and responsibility. Responsibility to notice when someone is struggling, to stay when it would be easier to walk away, to understand that sometimes a single act of kindness, a pause, a question, a moment of care can change the course of a life. Libby's story should not only be remembered for how it ended, but for who she was and for what her loss teaches us. In remembering her, we honor her humanity, and in learning from her story, we give meaning to a tragedy that should never have happened. This is not just a story about crime. It is a story about awareness, compassion, and the quiet moments where our choices matter most. Libby Squire is gone, but she should never be forgotten.